Oh, we're live on YouTube. It says we're live on YouTube.
Yes.
Hello.
No, not yet, not yet. I can't see it yet. You say we are. Yes.
We are. I think we're live on YouTube.
Yeah, we
Good
are.
evening, everybody. It's just coming up for 8 p.m. on a Friday evening that's in UK time. Welcome to all our live viewers, and thank you for watching. All the people that are going to watch the recording tonight. We have got the Rod Chang,
Lee Rod Chang.
principal and founder of the Academy of Astrology. We also have Marcus Patchett, who is another first-class astrologer. He's also a medical herbalist and a medical astrologer and a traditional astrologer. Sounds like a few hats, but all those things combined into one fantastic package. And myself, Mandy Lockley, just a common or garden astrologer who's joining in for the ride and has got a couple of
common or garden astrologer.
Common or garden.
Great. What are you on about?
So I don't know whether you watched last week's podcast. It was just with Rod and Marcus, and they did a fantastic talk. First of all, the first half of it was about Mars in Cancer. Please don't miss that. It was a really good talk on Mars in Cancer. Catch up if you haven't seen it. And then also for the last sort of 15-20 minutes, they talked about the full moon in Scorpio. So I think we're going to just spend the first sort of 10 minutes of tonight. We're going to try and keep it to about half an hour, probably just a little bit over, knowing us. Start off, do a little bit of a post-mortem, which is quite a kind of apt word for the moon in Scorpio on what might have happened personally and also in the world. So I don't know, Rod, do you have something to say on...
Yeah. Let me put up the chart. So now I think most of us can see the chart, right?
Yeah, and this was Tuesday the 27th, wasn't it, Rod?
Yes, indeed. Yes,
and this
indeed.
is the UK.
This is a UK chart. So I use the UK as as we are in UK, but we can easily to switch to some other place. What I noticed is, as we talking about last time, we talking about Mars, just like step into the Cancer, and we can notice a lot of like a very Martian type energy as Mars is out of bound and also in Greece. So Mars become a play important role for the next 2 weeks for this full moon. What I noticed is like we're talking about the Boris Johnson, and we talk about the like last time when the Mars in the same degree, 2-degree Cancer, what happened for the London riots in 2011, and that really always kind of a fascinating, and we can really see a lot of Mars type things going to happen now. Especially, I just noticed from yesterday in UK, that's a kind of a big news in UK is an actor has been accused about harassment or something. Then now Sky acts his TV drama now. So I would feel like this, especially things related to sex harassment. That is very Martian type event, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. That's interesting, Rod. Also, that the sexual harassment thing seems very related to the sort of, because we've got that stellium in Taurus with Venus and the Sun and Uranus, and all in square to Saturn in Aquarius. So Saturn in Aquarius, it could be thought of as like social rules.
Yes.
And that was triggered this week by the Scorpio moon, full moon. So it's sort of like bringing buried, difficult, emotional stuff to the surface and putting that stuff that's in conflict with social rules, and sort of magnifying that. So he might have been an unwilling avatar of that energy. Do you know what I mean? Like somebody but Saturn is always like karmic, right? So it brings you the bill. It's like,
yes,
this is as happening as a consequence of action you have taken, or the things that have happened. So yeah,
Mandy, what's your experience during this last couple of days after full moon?
Yeah, well, I actually had a very interesting experience that takes in not only the full moon, but also moon in Cancer, Mars in Cancer, which was a topic last week as well. So the full moon, the moon in Scorpio on the 27th fell in the 6th house, in house 6 in my natal chart. And the 6th house, as we know, is about health. It can also be about your pets.
Yes.
I noticed the day before the full moon, I noticed there was something wrong with my pet. He was lethargic. He wasn't eating. He appeared to be in incredible lot of pain. He has some health issues anyway, some quite serious, potentially end of life health issues anyway. So I was rather worried. Took him to the vet. He spent the whole day hospitalized. So the full moon, obviously the sun and Uranus was in my 12th house, which is about hospitalization. The vet told me upon examination, a physical examination, that the cat probably had quite a serious tumor in his sort of tummy area, in his abdominal area. So I agreed to have an ultrasound test done on him. And just a few hours after the full moon, the same day of the full moon, I got a call from the vet with very, very good news that it wasn't cancer. It was actually, he was blocked up. He was really, really blocked up with poop. He was terribly, terribly constipated. So why that is, I mean, the poor thing, you know, the relief was brilliant, but also if we look at that astrologically, when you look at the idea of Scorpio, now I've got a medical astrologer here in the group with us, so if I get everything not quite nuanced correct, I'm sure
I'll pipe up then.
But one of the things that Scorpio is about, Scorpio is a fixed sign, so Scorpio holds on to things. The full moon was a square to Saturn can block things, particularly in a fixed sign, and it's in the fixed sign of Aquarius. So the poor chap was all blocked up. And the need of Scorpio is the need to purge. And obviously, one way of purging, the physical purging, and Scorpio, I think, is actually associated with the bowels as well, isn't it?
Definitely. Moon in Scorpio is bowel, because moon is bowel as well.
Yeah, exactly. So the poor thing, his bowels were all blocked up. And what was really interesting actually on the day is that the Mars in Cancer was in my 2nd house, which is of money, exactly opposing my sun in the 8th house.
Right.
So let's just say the day of it was a very expensive way to diagnose.
What's almost too perfect about this story, Mandy, is that it even brings in the Mars in Cancer, because Mars is often related to medical treatment. I think you paid massive money for an enema for your cat. Do you know what I mean? It's like the Mars
basically
reception.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping the insurance will pay up. I am insured. I've put the claim in. 8th house again. Well,
that's almost, it's almost because like that was the one thing that was supportive about that full moon was the Mars moon mutual reception.
Yes.
It's kind of like that might also help you out with the money, but it's a brilliant, it's a perfect story, and it's really lovely because there's a sort of happy ending, you know.
I thought I had to share it because it just, sometimes astrology can be so perfect to the symbolism. It's just
so literal.
It's so literal to the symbolism. Not to say everyone who's got a cat who had that full moon in their 6th house in their chart is going to have a constipated cat, of course. Myriad and infinite ways that can play out, but I thought it was quite perfect for the astrology, so I thought I would share that. By the way, if anyone's interested, sorry, it's a Friday night, I'm sure everyone's having their dinner, but he did actually poop for the first time this afternoon, so
congratulations, let's say.
That's great. I mean, it's a great story. I don't think anything, I was a bit worried that something dramatic might happen because it's right across my ascendant descendant really, but it was fine. I just, on the day in the evening, I felt exhausted and a bit sick, but I just did a bit more meditating and went to bed early, so very uneventful. But the thing was, I was supposed to be visiting, I think I said last week, I was supposed to be visiting my family. Saturn was falling in my 4th sign, which relates to family and home in my chart. And that was stopped because a member of my family got diagnosed positive with COVID, and therefore I can't visit them. So, but I'll rescheduled, and so far so good. It's all working out fine. So whatever. But so it's like I said, it's a full moon, not an eclipse. But
Yeah.
Rod, did anything happen to you particularly? Oh,
well, you know,
I know that something did.
well, at this moment, I'm trying to adopt my new lifestyle, my new diet and the new routine. So, you know, this moment is kind of quite interesting. And this moment is on my 5th and 11th axis.
Okay.
So, you know, when we work on like for Monday, it's a 6 and 12, and for me, it's a 5th and 11. I really probably not really have many experience about 5th and 11 at this moment, but I take it quite easy.
Okay.
I just like, you know, take it easy and more relaxed, kind of not really feel like, oh, I'm torturing myself. Like like I'm drinking a new herbal tea, and I quite enjoy it. I feel quite interesting. It's like every test or every new different thing for me is like a game at this moment.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. That's positive.
Yeah. So how about let's quick look at some news. I do some screenshot about from CNN, from BBC. I think this is the most important news for international news today. Is the 45 people has been killed in the Israel during the religion ceremony.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was happening in the mountain, and there was like kind of a, you know.
When did this happen, Rod? When was this?
I think this was happened yesterday, something like that, or today. So I think today.
And the other thing, it just reminds me, because I'm not good at keeping up with the news, which is not great for an astrologer, to be honest. But the other thing was obviously that the COVID numbers going mental in India.
Oh yes,
maybe
exactly.
The full moon has something to say about that. I don't know. I don't have India's chart.
I do.
So that
I do. You want to see it? Should we have a quick look? Yeah, I got it.
Because apparently the COVID numbers have been going crazy in India, haven't they?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Okay, let me turn on the chart. Let's look at. I have the Indian chart, and let me put it with full moon. Okay. Give me a second.
No worries, just to see if something falls on it or not. It might not, but
we'll see.
And then we could maybe segue into our next topic, looking at India's chart. I don't know, whatever. See.
Let me put India's chart and the full moon. Let's see. Okay.
Interesting.
Here we are.
Hey, well done.
So,
I haven't looked at this chart before, actually.
Yeah,
No,
Yeah, I looked at a couple of days ago while I was chatting with another group, Tuesday group. We have like a kind of a mundane astrology talking, chatting.
Wow, look at,
have you seen that Saturn Uranus?
Look at where its moon is. Look at where India's moon is.
Yeah, 5-degree Taurus.
Yeah.
Pick up by Lisa full moon. Yes.
So the moon always is one significator of the people in a mundane charts. Like we've got the ascendant and the ascendant ruler, but the moon is like public and the public health generally. So this full moon this week was right on there.
Yeah.
Of Saturn and Uranus.
Yes.
And then Mars in Cancer. Was hitting the India's IC, which is one of the angles in their chart, and Mars rules the 8th house, India's national 8th house, which is the house of death. And it's a day chart as well, so Mars is more problematic in their chart anyway. So really interesting.
I think they also the that Saturn Uranus really touch on the one way Saturn conjunct India's chart's Jupiter, and in another way the Sun and Uranus is conjunct with the Moon. So this bring the everyday's life, and make things like so intensive because this Saturn Uranus square really hit on this chart. As I know, I think the Indian has because I think this is the Republic chart. There's independent chart.
Okay.
On the independent chart is 1948, and there is the Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, all in the early degree of Leo.
Oh, interesting.
Where
So again,
from
it
the
would be
T-square with Saturn and the Uranus. So this is the Indian situation, and
wow.
we always with astrology we like to forecast. So we would say, oh, is that going to getting better or not? If wait until you see the new moon chart next month in India. Here it is.
Oh, well,
Could you see it?
we can see the new moon chart, but is that on top of? Can you put it on top of India's chart?
Okay, yes.
A
But
bi-wheel?
have you seen the new moon chart? Have the angle?
Well, the Saturn angular.
Saturn's
Oh,
angle
yes,
angle,
yes, yeah.
yes.
I see. What Rod's
Yeah.
pointing out there is in India, the new moon next month. We've got a nighttime chart with Saturn right on the angle, which generally
Yes.
doesn't mean things getting better. It's quite a
Yes.
it's like lockdown, basically. That's
Yes.
lockdown central. That chart looks
Yeah.
like.
Okay, let's put two charts together. Still pretty similar, but we can see when there's new moon in the second house.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to the full moon chart, I mean, the full moon in this situation, the full moon can mean that something has peaked, but they don't believe it's peaked. But what I think happened in that full moon is that their situation became global. It became global.
It was brought
the whole
out
world became aware.
Yeah.
Exactly. Everyone saw what was happening.
Mm.
But it seems like you said they've got a way to go, unfortunately. Very, very, very shocking and distressing images. And you can probably, when Uranus is really activating, it's activating, for example, the moon, the pinnacle. What we have been seeing is really, really shocking images. We've been seeing images of, for example, of like funeral pyres, for example.
Yes.
But oxygen because they can't breathe, and and you do tend to see things that are quite shocking often when Uranus is very activated, which it does seem to be on this chart.
Yes.
Yeah. Very good. I mean, very, very spot on, really. I mean, it's obvious, like Saturn's already been over their sun, but this time of year, the sun is just, and sort of Uranus has already been over the sun and moon. So Saturn and Uranus have already but what's crucial about this time of year is we've got the sun, when the sun would have triggered it in Aquarius. At this time of year, the sun is triggering it again. And then at that full moon, the moon just triggered it. So that the sun is like something that powers up aspects or configurations as it moves past them. And then the moon is like an instant trigger that just sort of, so it's
Which are pretty striking is I know Monday you use the solar arc, right? You use the solar arc as a technique. If we turn into solar arc, as I remember, in the solar arc chart, if I remember, with like Sun, Moon, Neptune form a T-square with Indian's Republic chart.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, this is pretty striking. The Indian situation suddenly gets pretty serious. I think it's not only India. I think the other places kind of very interesting. But today, I think French president just announced his easy lockdown plan. From next week. They will gradually easily lock down. So I mean, things are moving, and I'm more curious about us because I mean, when you see in UK that new moon chart has the full moon chart has Neptune on it, that kind of worry me.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we'll see, because I'm just finishing off a bit of work about the ingress charts for this year, and I think touch wood, fingers crossed, we'll be out of lockdown all summer. It looks like autumn autumn might be a bit more difficult for us in
Yes.
the UK here.
Yes, yes.
But
summer should be okay.
Summer should be okay with no luck. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Okay, should we? Yep,
something
Mandy?
interesting actually. It's
Yes.
just literally occurred to me. I was just thinking about the idea of lies when you've got that full moon. I mean, we're probably making a little bit too much of this one full moon, as
Yes.
said. It's not an eclipse, but it's been a very interesting one nevertheless. And there's been a lot of thing in the news about who's lying, who's Boris Johnson.
Oh yes.
Is he lying about? Is he lying about what he said about the bodies piling? Let the bodies pile up in the streets.
What was the context of that quote, Mandy? Just because
it was apparently when they were arguing about the second lockdown in the UK, privately, I think either privately or within the cabinet, but obviously behind closed doors, not in front of the media or the public. He's quoted by at least 2, possibly 3 sources as saying basically that when he agreed to a second lockdown, because we had a big lockdown, then we had a mini second lockdown, and then a third big lockdown, he said he would rather see the bodies piling up in the streets. I'm not exact quote, but something like that.
What really struck me,
going to a third lockdown.
Right. What really struck me about that, I hadn't read that, and when you mentioned that, I was like, this is by the way, folks, this is talking about, if for anyone who doesn't know, Boris Johnson, the UK's Prime Minister, who was quoted as saying this the other week. And what really struck me about that is, as you know, he has natally a Scorpio moon.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's quoted as saying this in the week when you have this full moon squaring Saturn and bringing in Uranus, the full moon in Scorpio, and also Mars entering Cancer, because it's that full moon of, there's a little bit of the like, well, if you don't appreciate me, let them burn about Mars in Cancer, you know. I know it's my Mars, I know it too well. It's like a little bit of the emotional victim, you know, that passive aggressive, you know, turning it outwards thing. And that's it's very like, I've had it with you, sod you then, you know. Felt a bit like, so it was interesting. And I think you did you say it how did that full moon fall in his chart? Because I haven't. Is this Boris's chart?
Yeah, this is Boris's chart.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, right. So, oh my God, Mars. Look, Mars is right on his north node.
Yes, indeed.
At the full moon, which is crazy. So the full moon, the north node inflates things. Yeah. And what was it? What was the other thing you mentioned, Mandy, about the way this fell on his chart? There was something else, wasn't there, about the.
Well, I think it was simply because he's got moon in Scorpio, and we don't think of him as having a Scorpio moon.
No, because he's got the Libra
rising, Gemini,
so he seems all like genial and
So we saw that Scorpio moon at work. But what I think is most interesting, actually, in the days that followed, that story has gone away to be replaced by a row about wallpaper. You know, and it's that kind of that Gemini thing, that mercurial thing.
The Libra rulership, the Venus rulership.
Let's tell another story.
Let's just drown out the inner rage with an outward argument about wallpaper.
Which is, if anyone doesn't know, it's about how did he find the money? Where did he get the money from to fund a £58,000 refurb on his Downing Street flat, on his ministerial flat? Basically, it's all about wallpaper and. You can look it up if you don't know the story. It's actually ridiculous, but you know, row about wallpaper.
It's kind of under a lot of pressures, and
Gemini.
Yes, and I think more important, I mentioned it last week, is the next solar eclipse is located at the 19-degree Gemini, and yes. You see, he got planet exactly on the 19-degree Gemini. It's his son's Mercury, and I think he's a very Mercurial type person. I think so. This solar eclipse on his Mercury could mean something. Yeah, especially ruler his 9th house and the 12th house. Something hidden maybe going to.
He's going to be investigated. The investigations will be going on about this funding, the money for this refurb. But flat, you know, so you know, maybe that's it. I guess we'll see.
It's going to be something that turns up surely about his, because 9th house is obviously overseas or higher education, and 12th house is shady dealings or whatever. So it's going to be some information that suddenly is brought to light about those sorts of things.
I think we are not surprised when he working with comments, right? The comments will keep.
Yeah, completely. So, I mean, because we wanted to talk about the Sun Uranus a little bit, because that's happening today.
Yes,
right?
indeed.
So,
yes. So let's move on then. Let's move on the Saturn Uranus square triggered by Sun. I think should we first talking about this? Maybe some audience don't know what means trigger. Should we give an example about that? Let me go back. Stop sharing. Okay. Yeah. How about Mandy?
Triggering.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we were going to talk tonight a little bit about the Saturn square Uranus that we have in the sky. That's ongoing and will be ongoing for some time, because the moving sort of aspects in the sky in mundane astrology, they can last sort of, they're not just, it's not just about when they're actually exact, something happened on that day. Some of, especially including the outer planets, they can last for a year or two. You tend to use quite wide orbs because you see a longer influence in mundane astrology than you might possibly in personal astrology. A trigger is basically when a faster moving planet meets, i.e. by conjunction or opposition or even square, one of those planets. Well, if it meets one of them and they're already in an aspect, it meets two of them. So a slow moving planet meets that longer moving aspect between two outer planets. In this respect, we're talking about Saturn Uranus. Yes. So it's a trigger. So you will expect to see things happen that are relevant to what for example, the Saturn square Uranus means, but also to what the trigger planet is. So trigger planet might be the sun, it might be the moon, particularly, for example, if the moon is in an eclipse, it might be Mars, it might be Venus. So you kind of look out for those things specifically coming up more when there's a trigger planet, for example.
Yeah. So like use this year's Saturn Uranus square as an example. So this year Saturn Uranus square is formed the square from January, and it will last until the end of this year. So it's like a whole year long. So like for astrologer, when we're working, we will say, okay, this year, this is a pretty important aspect. But when, whole year, are we going to tell our client, or are we going to forecast like a whole year? We should be careful.
Whole year, everything's unpredictable.
Yes. But indeed, I'm quite happy to say that to my client, but they probably not going to be happy with that. So in this time, trigger is pretty important, because trigger it means like we or we turn on something. So when the fast moving planet move in, it activates or it make it more busy. So like at this moment, the sun is moving toward to like between 7 to 10 degree Taurus now. Yeah. And it conjunct with Uranus, and also square the Saturn. So we have Saturn Uranus square and Sun join it. It activated this, make it more busy.
There is a configuration, just to put in a little technical thing from traditional astrology, which is saying the same thing exactly in different language, which you'll be both familiar with. It's called a translation of light, which is just a technical term for exactly the same thing, where you have two slower moving planets and a third, usually faster moving planet, traverses between them, and it makes the aspect. So say in this case, we've got, as you mentioned, Rod, Saturn at 12 degrees Aquarius or whatever, and Uranus at 10 degrees Taurus, is it?
Yes.
And the sun will hit Uranus, then separate from Uranus, and then apply to the square of Saturn. So that sun would be known in traditional astrology as translating the light of one to the other. It sort of completes the aspect. And obviously the planet that does that the most frequently is the moon. She's always translating the light. She's always completing aspects and triggering and setting things off. But then the sun does that as well. But when the sun does it, it's often slightly more significant because it happens less frequently, and the sun sort of powers it up a bit more, I'd say.
So I don't know if I understand this right or wrong, and because I love the translating of light. I always feel like it's kind of a narrative of a story. You bring like in this case, this time Sun bring the story from Uranus to Saturn.
Yeah, it's literally just, I think it depends on the circumstances, as always in astrology, and what that thing how that might play out. I think that's accurate, but I think it's easier just to think of it as that third planet completing the aspect. As you guys have said, it is just a traditional way of saying triggering, but in a particular context, it might literally represent a messenger running from one person to another, or a text message being sent, or an event which, like dominoes, that domino falls and then that domino. But it's like the third planet is often a third character or event which connects these other two things and ignites the situation, whatever that might be, for good or bad.
So in this, sorry,
I was just saying, it's interesting that you use the word character, because it can literally be a character. So, for example, a sun can represent a man, or for example, in mundane astrology, it can be a king or a ruler or a boss,
bosses or important people. Totally.
Moon can be a mother. It can be the common people. It can be literally. Sometimes it's quite useful, even when you're not talking about real people, to think of these
totally, as having characteristics. Totally specific.
I just recalled a story I read recently. I don't know, do you guys still remember a story a couple years ago in United States, and a entrepreneur, a boss who is very generous to give all his employee big bonus and a very high salary in his company. So it turns out the company running very, very well. And they become a news because this boss is so generous. Nearly like all the company's profit go to all his employees. Then today, I think it was yesterday or today, the news comes out. He was in an interview, and then he was saying, "I've been called communist just because." Just because I give the share a big profit with all my company's colleague.
He's a bad capitalist then, isn't he?
It's very interesting because this is the Sun, the leader, company boss, and the Saturn Uranus square. This is very capitalism. This is very capitalism.
Doing the right thing, you could say. It depends. You see, I was thinking quite a bit about Saturn Uranus today, and I was thinking, well, the right thing. Saturn is about doing the right thing, what you should do, but that kind of depends on your perspective as well, and we'll
and what the social rules are, because this Saturn's the
social rules exactly.
Yeah. So I think
exactly. But
sorry, Manny. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say. So he was doing the right things by his employees, but as a capitalist, all about profit and all about sort of most ventures are about sort of you've got to pay the investors back, you've got to pay your shareholders, etc. That's quite shocking.
Yeah, he's getting slammed for that.
Unconventional. That's Uranus.
Yes, very unconventional. Yeah.
I remember I was saying a couple, I think in the first episode, something about Saturn in Aquarius being in the detriment of the Sun. So Saturn, any planet in Aquarius is because one can think of it conceptually as Aquarius as being like the collective, right? And it's so not about the individual. So that's why it's the detriment of the Sun. It's the people versus the royalty. And so like Saturn in Aquarius is about those social rules or laws, which are about, we don't care what you individually want. This is what the rules are.
This is our society.
Yeah. So there's something about this Saturn Uranus square, I feel, which is very much about the whole, the woke ideology, the social justice movement has been sort of bubbling along for a few years.
Definitely.
Coming to more of a head, because it is about, on the one hand, it's got the Uranian element of bringing to light injustice and sort of revolution. But on the other hand, it's got this really Saturnine, circumscribing, authoritarian, cutting people off at the knees if they step out of line kind of vibe to it as well. So it's kind of like the shakedown between those two things. And I would expect with this Sun Uranus square Saturn situation, there to be stories about people. That's really good story, Rob, because that's like a boss who's somebody who's trying to do the right thing in a revolutionary way.
Yes.
And is getting socially slammed for it.
Yes.
Because you're with this one, because it's a square, somebody's going to cuss you out for it, whatever side you fall on, for being too fair or too unfair. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like
yes.
it's quite a tricky one. So
yes,
there was a head teacher at a school, and a head teacher decided, and this is, a head teacher in that context of a school, you could say that's the son because he's in charge.
Yeah.
Who has banned the use of the terms boys and girls.
Okay.
Yep.
That's interesting. That's kind of going back to that woke thing, and it's another one of those things that you can have. There's so many different opinions, right or wrong, that you can have about that, and it's quite a confusion. The whole issue of gender at the moment.
That goes back to Uranus in Taurus stuff, doesn't it, Mandy?
Exactly.
That you were talking about revolution, shake your body, whatever. Revolutionize the idea of body, and
Are you a boy or are you a girl, or should you be neither, or should you be either, or should you choose? That's the question. That's one of the questions that's going on at the moment.
Thanks, Mandy, to bring this up, because it's so interesting. Because last time when the full moon in the 8-degree Aquarius in January triggered the set of aspects, we also have similar things. It was the in Brighton for the midwife, right? They give the name of a term of like a chest feeding.
Oh, interesting.
That was the same time. Was that time in January? And the full moon was in
feeding. Did you say chest feeding?
Chest feeding.
Breastfeeding.
Because I wasn't aware until our friend Tania say, Rod, have you read this? I said, what? She said, my husband tried. He couldn't chest feeding.
But I mean, the thing is, I think that these conversations, however ludicrous they may sound to some, I think do need to be had. And I think looking just purely at the astrology with Saturn in that sort of top position, things are probably going to come down more on the side of conventional wisdom for now. But I think it's, as you rightly say, it's going to be triggered whenever this happens. And I think there's something, obviously the Saturn Uranus square that's happening. We do need to have these conversations about sort of the clash between the Saturn in Aquarius, social rules and the collective. So I always think of Saturn in Aquarius makes me think of the architect Le Corbusier. I don't know if he was an architect in the 1920s, I think, and he designed all these buildings that were all white. And like he was very, very egalitarian, I don't know if he was a Marxist, but that kind of socially egalitarian anyway. So all the individual apartments were all exactly the same size and shape, and they were very, very modernist. Of course, they're the kind of buildings that look like brilliant on paper and look beautiful once they're new, and after about 10 years they look awful. Do you know what I mean? Stained and whatever. But not everyone would disagree. Some people like them, but I think when they're old they look terrible. But really, like, he had this really idealistic view of so I always think of Saturn in Aquarius for that. It's like building some sort of egalitarian structure. But it's a structure that's like, it looks great on paper, but then when you put it in real life, you've got to deal with all the, animals crapping on it, and like ivy growing up the walls and graffiti in the stairwells, and her upstairs who's unhappy because she's got the same size flat as the one downstairs. And there's 5 of them in that flat. Do you know what I mean? It just, so it's all of the, and I think you're getting that kind of, because the Taurus stuff with Uranus there is like revolutionizing both bodies and money. And all the stuff that you talked about in your videos about Uranus in Taurus, Mandy, and then the Saturn is kind of going, no, these are the rules. So
it's a bit bleak, isn't it? Saturn in Aquarius can feel a little bit bleak, in that context we were just talking about, Marcus, as well.
Bleak's a good one. It's very wintry. It's very cold.
For the common good, but it's a bit bleak in terms of the aesthetic, perhaps, or the
I think
individual sort of.
I think it's got like, it's like anything. It's like, because Saturn is a malefic, and he is showing a better side, I think, in Aquarius generally. But I think that's I think that sounds right to me. I mean, because the dark side of it could be a bit depersonalizing or dehumanizing.
Yes,
because it's that detriment of the sun thing.
Yeah.
The
I don't know
plus
it's my
side
computer,
of it.
but you break me.
Yes, Monday is a little bit have a little jam.
Breaking up. Mentioning Saturn in Aquarius, it's just like
she's back.
Instant blackout.
I lost my connection then.
You were doing a metalog, Mandy. It was just like
indeed
Saturn in Aquarius.
You got really, really slow there, Marcus.
Dark,
and one wasn't moving at all, and then everything went dark. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Perfect.
Yeah. So
we've got to just a quick one, just to remind everyone, or for sort of beginners. This Saturn square Uranus at the moment is part of a bigger cycle. So basically, the start of the Saturn Uranus cycle starts with the conjunction. It's about 45-year cycle. So the conjunction, the first conjunction, and it wouldn't have been in the same signs. This conjunction was in 1988.
Yeah.
And then that was when the seeds were planted, really, and then you had the first square, which is the opening square, and then you start to see a little bit more about what you planted, and you know, you can, that analogy. Then the opposition, actually, for Saturn Uranus, the current cycle that we're in now, was actually sort of 2008 to 2010.
Yes.
Which was when we had Obama came in, so that change. It was just after the credit. It was the credit crunch and the banking crisis and all of that, which is very kind of Saturn Uranus. And then off the back of that, about a year later, was when we had the Arab Spring and all the revolutions, for example. And now we've got the closing square. So the final kind of big aspect, major aspect of this current cycle. And I often think of that, this end part of the cycle, almost like a little bit of a silly season, really. You get some of the bonkers things start to come out, because all these things have been brewing, and it all seems to sort of come out. Well, it's, you know, and I think some of those things we talked about tonight possibly come into that category. I don't know what you guys, whether you think you agree, or whether that's just something I've observed.
Well, for me, there's a two way to see this. In one way, Saturn square with Uranus, that is like the conflict between the new idea, revolution idea, and experiments with what we used to be, and with the security, with the safe side of the world, and the more like a establishment or the stabilizing. So this conflict, I mean, we all in the same place. We expecting different things. I agree what Marcus says. The conversation is extremely important during this time. No matter you agree with each other or not, but conversation improve the situation. I think maybe like when I see some of my friends totally disagree with me, but we still trying to not say I'm trying to convince you. No. Yeah. I just like you understand why I choose this, and that's enough. I think that's enough.
The difficult thing, obviously, as both of you guys know, is neither Saturn nor Uranus are big on compromise.
No.
They're both in a sense authoritarian. Obviously, Saturn is classically authoritarian. These are the rules. Obey the rules. Don't obey the rules. I'm not listening to you. That's Saturn. Or
Indeed.
You're locked up, or whatever.
Yeah.
Uranus is like stuff your rules, but it's libertarian, but in a like rebellious hardline way. So neither of them are compromising, and often that square or opposition tends to produce situations of no compromise. But I think, yeah, as you say, Rod, the conversation, what does come up, and Mandy, I think you're quite right about it. Sort of like they tend to bring up potentially sort of silly season situations, because it's like nobody listens to each other.
Yes.
And then you know, so I don't know. I think it's like looking, at least at the moment, Venus is in Taurus, which is helping a bit. like we said last week, Mars in Cancer probably isn't helping at all. But Venus in, I mean, Mars in Cancer might help out the Moon in Scorpio a bit,
Yeah.
but generally probably not helping the overall vibe. But when we get little sort of aspects from Venus or Jupiter, that can help. So I think the co-presence of Jupiter in Aquarius has helped a bit, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And I think the current presence of Venus might help a bit, but
yeah. Another thing I want to add it in is continue with what Monday talking about the planet cycle things, because this is the end of cycle, and usually this winning square, this last square, has a meaning about we have during the struggle, during the conflict, we have to make a decision. We have to choose what we can carry on, and what still we have time to do, and those we don't have time to do. Those is too big, and we just expecting or something. We have to let go about that part. So that's about like a process of a big plan. We are arrived. This part. So it's ending part to prepare for the ending.
That's what I hadn't thought about this, but because it's like a Saturn Uranus configuration, presumably the waxing square would have Uranus on top. And in the waning phase of the cycle, we've got Uranus on the bottom. In other words, Saturn is in the 10th sign from Uranus, whereas in the waxing, Uranus is in the 10th from Saturn, I presume. So it's kind of like in the opening phase, historically, it's like let all the crazy out of the box. And it's like the crazy, i.e. the new ideas, win, because it's like, okay, we need to take this old crap apart, and like, here are the new ideas. And oh my God, some of those new ideas are more of the new ideas are going to be retained. And in this one, I think there will still be new ideas that are going to be retained and made concrete, because that's the Saturn thing, isn't it? But we're also going to have a load of new ideas, if following on through that waning idea, Rod, that are more of them are going to have to be shed or let go of, because they're not going to pass the Saturn test in the way.
Exactly.
The test of time, the test of truth, the test of social, acceptance. Yeah,
it's an interesting thing when we look back to the opposition, as I said, which was 2008 to 2010. I think it had 5 conjunctions. We'll be talking a little bit about retrograde probably, I think, next week. So there's a retrograde that was 5 conjunctions, which is a lot. Went back and forth, but then after the banking crisis, if you remember, we had a long period of austerity. Now, it wasn't just Saturn and Uranus. There was a lot else going on at the time. We're just talking about Saturn and Uranus tonight. But we had a period of austerity. So basically, from whatever sector you look at, the bankers messed up. Too much money was lent to too many people who couldn't pay it back. There was a credit crunch, and then the banking, the banks had to be propped up by the government, not just in the UK, but I think in the US and in other places around the world. And what came out of that were many years of austerity. So basically, there were cutbacks in social services, in public services, in things like benefits, in things like welfare, in things like the real salaries, in terms of salaries relative to the cost of living, went down, even though maybe rises, real salaries went down, but then the gap between the rich and the poor got ever and ever wider, and continued to get wider since. So we had austerity then. We started to recover. Now we're in the waning square. We have the pandemic, and again, just to say that the Saturn Uranus, there's a lot more going on in the sky. The pandemic. We're just picking on one thing for the sake of simplicity. On that, but we're in that situation now where the government, certainly in the UK, and I know in the US as well, have been throwing, since Biden came in. Biden, by the way, came in during this current Saturn Uranus square. He has Saturn Uranus conjunction in his chart.
Yes,
a lot in leaders. Their charts will really kind of resonate very strongly with what's happening. The mundane, now, governments are throwing money to try and throwing money into the pot in unfathomable amounts to try and sort of save the economy. We wonder what's going to happen next. So they're not going automatically to austerity. We wonder what will happen next. Who will pay for that?
Yeah.
Who will pay for?
I think
Who will pay it back
the
is what I wanted-
inevitable
what I wanted to
the inevitable conversion of hard currency into technological currency. Like
Yeah.
maybe Bitcoin's a bit, woo at the moment, but like
Yeah.
maybe Bitcoin, but maybe other more virtual currencies, almost certainly, because I
Yep.
see that as the Uranus through Taurus.
Definitely.
And something about Saturn in Aquarius in an
Yeah.
air sign.
Yeah.
It's converting the solid
Yeah.
into more equally rule bound,
Yeah.
but more gaseous. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like more.
Indeed,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
kind of a digital currency, and the cryptocurrency is kind of a big issue at this moment. Things like, I mean, since last week, the Bitcoin was falling down for quite a lot, just because the American has a like kind of new tax things going to aim on this kind of investment things. So that make it Bitcoin dropping down. So, I really want to continue, but I have to, as my job, I have to stop us because I really like mundane astrology and I really like chatting with you guys. But I think we take really long now. It's 15 minutes. So, somebody will told me off. And I think, anyway, we will be here next week. Yeah.
But it's a Friday night. It's a night down the pub for us, isn't it? Basically, we haven't been able to do that for well over a year. Sitting around talking about astrology.
Indeed.
It's just like a night down the pub.
So true.
We could go on all night, but we shall obviously.
Yes.
Leave it, won't we?
Yeah, we will. So next Friday we will continue doing our live stream podcast. And next week, I think there's a most important, because in May it's quite busy. We have like a lunar eclipse, and we have like a Jupiter changing sign. That is pretty important. So I think next week we will at least one topic we're going to talking about is the Jupiter move into Pisces. I think from 14th of May to 28th, I think 28th of July, during this kind of a 2 months-ish thingy, and we will experience about Jupiter in Pisces, and then we'll come back to Jupiter in Aquarius again. So thank you everyone. Thanks Marcus, thank you Mandy, and thank you everyone who following us. And so if you have any question, any suggestion, any topic you want us to talking about, just leave the message on this video on the discussion place, comment place. Thank you. And then we will try to bring it in. Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thanks folks. Bye.
Bye.